Pope Pius IX, born Giovanni Maria Mattei Ferretti, reigned from 16 June 1846 to his death in 1878. He was the longest reigning elected pope in the history of the Catholic Church, over 31 years. During his pontificate, he convened the First Vatican Council, which decreed papal infallibility. But the council was cut short due to the loss of the Papal States. Pius IX defined the dogma of the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary, meaning that Mary was conceived without original sin. Pius IX also conferred the title Our Mother of Perpetual Help on a famous Byzantine icon from Crete entrusted to the Redemptorists. He was also the last pope to rule as the sovereign of the Papal States, which fell completely to the Italian army in 1870 and were incorporated into the Kingdom of Italy. After this, he was referred to, chiefly by himself, as the prisoner of the Vatican. After his death in 1878, his canonization process was opened on the 11th of February 1907 by Pope Pius X, and it drew considerable controversy over the years. It was closed on several occasions during the pontificates of Pope Benedict XV and Pope Pius XI. On 7 December 1954, Pope Pius XII reopened the cause and Pope John Paul II proclaimed him venerable on 6 July 1985. Together with Pope John XXIII, he was beatified on 3 September 2000 after the recognition of a miracle and was assigned the liturgical feast day of February 7, which is the date of his death. Overview. Europe, including the Italian peninsula, was in the midst of considerable political ferment when the Bishop of Spoleto, Cardinal Giovanni Maria Mattei Ferretti, was elected pope. He took the name Pius, after his generous patron and the long-suffering prisoner of Napoleon Bonaparte, Pius VII. He had been elected by the faction of cardinals sympathetic to the political liberalization coursing across Europe, and his initial governance of the Papal States gives evidence of his own liberal sympathies. Under his direction, various sorts of political prisoners in the Papal States were released and the city of Rome was granted a constitutional framework under guidance of his friend, philosopher Prince Antonio Rosmini Serbati. A series of terrorist acts sponsored by Italian liberals and nationalists, which included the assassination of his Minister of the Interior, Pellegrino Rossi, among others, and which forced him briefly to flee Rome in 1848, led to his growing skepticism towards the liberal, nationalist agenda. Through the 1850s and 1860s, Italian nationalists made military gains against the Papal States, which culminated in the seizure of the city of Rome in 1870. Thereafter, Pius IX refused to accept the law of guarantees from the Italian government, which would have made the Holy See dependent on legislation that the Italian Parliament could modify at any time. His church policies towards other countries, such as Russia, Germany and France, were not always successful, due in part to changing secular institutions and internal developments within these countries. However, concordats were concluded with numerous states such as Austria-Hungary, Portugal, Spain, Canada, Tuscany, Ecuador, Venezuela, Honduras, El Salvador and Haiti. Many contemporary church historians and journalists question his approaches. His appeal for public worldwide support of the Holy See after he became the prisoner of the Vatican resulted in the revival and spread to the whole Catholic Church of Peter's Pence, which is used today to enable the Pope to respond to those who are suffering as a result of war, oppression, natural disaster, and disease. In his syllabus of errors, still highly controversial, Pius IX condemned the heresies of secular society, especially modernism. He was a Marian pope, who in his encyclical Ubi Primum described Mary as a mediatrix of salvation. In 1854, he promulgated the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, articulating a long-held Catholic belief that Mary, the Mother of God, was conceived without original sin. In 1862, he convened 300 bishops to the Vatican for the canonization of 26 martyrs of Japan. His most important legacy is the First Vatican Council, which convened in 1869. This council discussed many issues, especially the dogma of papal infallibility, which Pius was eager to have officially defined by the council, but the council was interrupted as Italian nationalist troops threatened Rome. The council is considered to have contributed to a centralization of the Church in the Vatican. Pius IX, who suffered from epilepsy, was beatified by Pope John Paul II on 3 September 2000. His feast day is the 7th of February. Early life and ministry. Giovanni Maria Maste Ferretti was the 9th child born in Senegalia into the noble family of Girolamo dei Conti Ferretti, and was baptized on the same day of his birth with the name of Giovanni Maria Giambattista Pietro Pellegrino Isidoro. He was educated at the Pius College in Volterra and in Rome. As a theology student in his hometown Senegalia, in 1814 he met Pope Pius VII, who had returned from French captivity. In 1815, he entered the papal noble guard but was soon dismissed after an epileptic seizure. He threw himself at the feet of Pius VII, who elevated him and supported his continued theological studies. The Pope originally insisted that another priest should assist Maste during Holy Mass, a stipulation that was later rescinded. After the seizure attacks became less frequent, Maste was ordained priest in April 1819. He initially worked as the rector of the Tata Giovanni Institute in Rome. Shortly before his death, Pius VII sent him as auditor to Chile and Peru in 1823 and 1825 to assist the apostolic nuncio, Monsignori Giovanni Musa and Monsignori Bradley Kane, in the first mission to post-revolutionary South America. The mission had the objective to map out the role of the Catholic Church in the newly independent South American republics. He was thus the first pope ever to have been in America. When he returned to Rome, the successor of Pius VII, Pope Leo XII, appointed him head of the Hospital of San Michele in Rome and canon of Santa Maria in Violetta. Pope Leo XII appointed Father Maste Ferretti Archbishop of Spoleto in 1827 at the age of 35. In 1831, the abortive revolution that had begun in Parma and Modena spread to Spoleto. The archbishop obtained a general pardon after it was suppressed, gaining him a reputation for being liberal. During an earthquake, he made a reputation as an efficient organizer of relief and great charity. The following year he was moved to the more prestigious diocese of Imola, was made a cardinal in Pector in 1839, and in 1840 was publicly announced as cardinal priest of Santi Marcellino e Pietro. As in Spoleto, his episcopal priorities were the formation of priests through improved education and charities. He became known for visiting prisoners in jail, and for programs for street children. According to historians, Cardinal Maste Ferretti was considered a liberal during his episcopate in Spoleto and Imola because he supported administrative changes in the Papal States and sympathized with the nationalist movement in Italy. Papal election. The conclave of 1846, following the death of Pope Gregory XVI, took place in an unsettled political climate within Italy. Because of this, many foreign cardinals decided not to attend the conclave. At its start, only 46 out of 62 cardinals were present. Moreover, the conclave of 1846 was steeped in a factional division between conservatives and liberals. The conservatives supported Luigi Lambruscini, Gregory XVI as a cardinal secretary of state. Liberals supported two candidates, Pasquale Tommaso Gizzi and the then 54-year-old Maste Ferretti. A fourth papabile was Cardinal Ludovico Micara, the dean of the College of Cardinals, who was favored by the residents of Rome itself, but he never gained support among the cardinals. During the first ballot, Matteo Ferretti received 15 votes, the rest going to Cardinal Lambruschini and Cardinal Gysi. Lambruschini received a majority of the votes in the early ballots, but failed to achieve the required two-thirds majority. Cardinal Gysi was favored by the French government but failed to get further support from the cardinals, and the conclave ended up ultimately as a contest between Cardinals Lambruschini and Matteo Ferretti. In the meantime, Cardinal Tommaso Bonetti reportedly received information that Karl Cajetan von Gaisruck, the Austrian Archbishop of Milan, was on his way to the conclave to veto the election of Matteo Ferretti. According to historian Valerie Piri, Cardinal Bonetti realized that if Lambruschini was to be stopped and Matteo Ferretti was to be elected, he had to convince the cardinals within a few hours or accept the election of Lambruschini. Bonetti then, on his own initiative, personally convinced the majority of the electors to switch their support to Matteo Ferretti. Faced with deadlock and persuaded by Bonetti to keep Lambruschini from being elected pope, liberals and moderates decided to cast their votes for Matteo Ferretti in a move that contradicted the general mood throughout Europe. By the second day of the conclave, on the 16th of June 1846, during an evening ballot, Matteo Ferretti was elected pope. He was a glamorous candidate, ardent, emotional, with a gift for friendship and a track record of generosity even towards anti-clericals and carbonari. He was a patriot, known to be critical of Gregory XVI, because it was night. No formal announcement was given, just the signal of white smoke. Many Catholics had assumed that Gysi had been elected successor of Saint Peter. In fact, celebrations began to take place in his hometown, and his personal staff, following a long-standing tradition, burned his cardinalitial vestments. On the following morning, the senior cardinal deacon, Tommaso Riario Sforza, announced the election of Matteo Ferretti, before a crowd of faithful Catholics. When Matteo Ferretti appeared on the balcony, the mood became joyous. Matteo Ferretti chose the name of Pius IX in honor of Pope Pius VII, who had encouraged his vocation to the priesthood despite his childhood epilepsy. However, Matteo Ferretti, now Pope Pius IX, had little diplomatic and no curial experience at all, which did cause some controversy. The government of the Empire of Austria, as represented by Prince Metternich in its foreign affairs, objected to even the possible election of Matteo Ferretti. Thus, Cardinal Gaisruck, Archbishop of Milan, was sent to present the Austrian official veto against Matteo Ferretti. However, Gaisruck arrived too late. The new pope was already elected. Pius IX was crowned on the 21st of June 1846. Papacy. The election of the liberal Pius IX created much enthusiasm in Europe and elsewhere, especially following the major upheavals of international European revolutions of the revolutions of 1848. Although he was not unknown and had done nothing on an administrative level before his election, and although there were no utterances from him, he increased in fame and popularity. For the next 20 months after the election, Pius IX was the most popular man on the Italian peninsula, where the exclamation, "Long life to Pius IX," was often heard. English Protestants celebrated him as a friend of light, and a reformer of Europe towards freedom and progress. He was elected without political influences from outside, and in the best years of his life, he was pious, progressive, intellectual, decent, friendly, and open to everybody. Governing the Church centralization, the end of the Papal States in the middle of the Italian boot, around the central area of Rome, was not the only important event in the long pontificate of Pius. His leadership of the Church contributed to an ever-increasing centralization and consolidation of power in Rome and the papacy. While his political views and policies were hotly debated, his personal lifestyle was above any criticism. He was considered a model of simplicity and poverty in his everyday affairs. More than his predecessors, Pius used the papal pulpit to address the bishops of the world. The First Vatican Council, which he convened to consolidate papal authority further, was considered a milestone not only in his pontificate but also for church history. Church rights. The church policies of Pius IX were dominated with the defense of the rights of the Church and the free exercise of religion for Catholics in countries like Russia and the Ottoman Empire. He also fought against what he perceived to be anti-Catholic philosophies in countries like Italy, Germany and France. Many of the Pope's subjects wanted to be Italian instead. The soldiers who guarded the Pope from Italians were largely French and Austrian. The Pope considered moving to Germany. After the French loss in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871, the Papal States lost its protector in Emperor Napoleon III of the Second French Empire and were absorbed by the newly unified in 1861. The Kingdom of Italy. Imperial Germany actively persecuted the Church under the Kaisers for a decade after the war. Jubilees. Pius IX celebrated several jubilees, including the 300th anniversary of the Council of Trent. Pius celebrated the 1800th anniversary of the martyrdom of the Apostle Peter and Apostle Paul on the 29th of June 1867 with 512 bishops, 20,000 priests and 140,000 laypersons in Rome. A large gathering was organized in 1871 to commemorate the 25th anniversary of his papacy. The Italian government in 1870 outlawed many popular pilgrimages. The faithful of Bologna organized a nationwide, spiritual pilgrimage to the Pope and the tombs of the Apostles in 1873. In 1875, Pius declared a holy year that was celebrated throughout the Catholic world. On the 50th anniversary of his episcopal consecration, people from all parts of the world came to see the old pontiff from the 30th of April 1877 to the 15th of June 1877. He was a bit shy, but he valued initiative within the Church and created several new titles, royal awards and orders to elevate those who in his view deserved merit. Consistories. Pius IX created a total of 122 new cardinals. The then number limit of the College of Cardinals was 70, of which 64 were alive at his death. Noteworthy elevations to the Red Hat included Vincenzo Pecci, his eventual successor Leo XIII, Nicholas Wiseman of Westminster, Henry Edward Manning, and John McCloskey, the first American ever to be elevated into the College of Cardinals.